not have a public hearing scheduled for tonight. Therefore, we do not expect to take any public comments on the Zoom meeting. Members of the public can always express their views by mail or email to planning@lewisboro.gov.com. Again, the public can see and hear this meeting via Zoom or live on the Lewisboro TV YouTube channel, which I see is now streaming actively. We will ask any applicants that are not currently engaging in dialogue to mute their lines. This will help everyone hear over the inevitable background noises. And as we go through our matters, to ease the recording of our votes, I will poll board members individually. Okay, let's get started. And I am going to adjust the order of the meeting. I see that we have the architect from the last thing on our agenda, which is, or almost the last, the referral from Wilton, Connecticut Inland Waterlands Commission on, and I think this is going to be relatively quick. So I want to bring that to forward. I've asked the board members if they're okay, and I think so. Quite often what we do is get a referral from another town. If they are close to our borders, they are required to refer. And I think, John, you could perhaps tell us, this seems to be, it's an, so first of all, I should say it. This is for the Ella residents at 174 Silver Spring Road in Wilton, Connecticut. It's the application for the construction of a kitchen addition and deck. And it appears to be a relatively minor change in footprint. So perhaps, John, you could just tell us a bit about that.
Okay, for the record, I'm John Doyle from Doyle Coffin Architecture. And on behalf of the Steve and Jennifer Aaliyah, who own the property at 174 Silver Spring Road, it is kind of a minor addition. Why don't I could share the screen and just kind of walk you through it quickly. Let's see here. Let me know if everybody can see it.
I was going to say, I suspect that our members have looked at it.
Oh, okay.
And unless you feel the need to go through it, quite often if it's something that is not in our town, we send a letter saying that if we don't have any constructive comment, we say we have want to send a letter of no comment to the inland, in this case, it would be the Inland Wetlands Commission in Wilton. So I would look for, unless there's any discussion or anyone wants to see more on this, I would look for a motion to that effect.
I move to send a letter of no comment.
I'll second that.
That was Greg seconded and Charlene made the motion. Any discussion on this?
No.
Okay, John, if you could stop screen sharing. Yes, okay, so now I will pull the board for this. Jerome?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Greg?
Yes.
And Charlene?
Aye.
And I also vote in favor of this motion. So with that, the motion is approved, and we will author a letter of no comment to the Inland Wetlands Commission. John, is that satisfactory to your?
Yes, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the board to take us earlier here to go through this. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Sure. We thought it would be quick, and it turned out to be. Thank you. Okay.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll see you.
Bye.
Sure. So, and thank everyone else for your patience in allowing us to do that. Okay, and I do want to say that we had anticipated the CAC member Mary Shaw joining, and she is now on the Zoom with us. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the waiver of site development plan procedure. This is calendar number 03-21PB. It's Cameron's Deli expansion at 890 Route 35, Cross River, New York, 10518. And this is an application for a change of use in the on the site that they are currently exist in. So I think the last time we felt that the major thing we needed was a parking calculation. And Jan, I think you told us that you think that the parking calculation is adequate?
Yeah, do we have a sort of representative?
Yes, hi. Hi, how is everybody? This is Marco Mandro. I'm the architect representing Ibrahim Jamal for
Okay.
890 New York 35, Cameron's Deli. Yeah, after speaking with Jan, we have resubmitted with the updated parking calculations. And we've also agreed to restripe the 3 ADA parking spots and provide new signage for those spots, as well as updating the outdoor seating area with some new brick pavers. Currently, there's just some rocks, and it's not really a pleasant outdoor space. So we want to improve that. But other than that, everything else outside is remaining the same. Signage is not changing. The storefront's remaining the same. And I think that was about it.
Okay, so so Jan, you did have a brief memo. Perhaps you want to.
Yep.
Any highlights?
Yeah, it's the application's before the board for a change of use permit, which triggers the waiver of site development plan procedures. The expansion of Cameron's Deli into the adjacent vacant tenant space requires a change of use permit because that vacant space was last utilized by a physical training studio or a physical therapist of some sort. So that's the reason why the application is before the board. It does require an approval from the Westchester County Health Department for a change of use permit. That is something we're still waiting on. And the installation of the pavers in the front yard there will require review of the Architectural and Community Appearance Review Council. The board had, I think, just delayed or postponed the referral to the building inspector at the last meeting because we hadn't had a complete parking analysis done, which we have now. So I would recommend that the application be referred to the building department for review. I don't see anything that would be problematic. I believe that the parking calculation for the deli is the same as the prior use, so that should be a net wash. However, the applicant's proposing, rightfully so, the restriping of 3 accessible parking spaces. And the code compliant widths of those spaces will likely require some adjustment in the width of and the striping of the parking lot. So you may end up losing 1 standard parking space when you go to install the 3 accessible spaces in their loading zones. I'll ask the building inspector to take a look at that. If that loss of parking will result in any sort of zoning nonconformity, I don't suspect so. There's plenty of parking on the site. And even if it did, there is some provisions in the code that would allow us to utilize the joint use of parking spaces because you have multiple uses on one lot with varying operation hours. So there'd be a mechanism in the code that the board could use if presented. The remainder of our comments are really just some notes on the plan, nothing of significance. We had a prior memo which the architect has addressed. So it's really referral to the building inspector, referral to ACARC, waiting for the health department approval, and the applicant should show the restriping of those parking spaces on the plan. I think they showed 5-foot wide access aisles where 8 foot's required. So there's, we have a comment about that. But other than that, I think the application's in good shape.
So I would look for consensus for referral to the building inspector and for ACARC. So I'm looking for thumbs up from the board members. Okay, so we've got that. The other thing is, since this does, I know we are waiting for the Westchester County Department of Health approval, but since this appears fairly close, I would suggest that we ask for a resolution to be drafted for July, and if everything comes back as we expect from the building inspector and ACARC, we could perhaps move forward. Is everyone in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so is there anything else? Anybody have any other questions on this application or comments that they want to make? Okay, yes, Jerome.
A quick comment. It seems to me that the expansion is really for back room and cooler. There's no seating, no additional seating, and
No.
Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just for additional like
Yeah.
large refrigerators, walk-in
Yeah.
coolers.
So from that point of view, I'm not sure why the health department is concerned. There's already a bathroom there, right?
I think they're
Yes, there is. We were proposing one new ADA bathroom for guests, but that's it.
Yeah, but you already have to comply with health department in terms of public water supply for a commercial space like that.
Mhm.
What else are you looking for, Jan? That would be of
So
consequence.
it's an increase in square footage to the deli use. So the health department will require a review.
Yeah.
Because of the increase. I mean, regardless if it's being occupied by freezers or not. I mean, the interior space is getting larger.
So it's just a formality, really, just
Probably, but there was a septic failure at the property some years ago. The septic system was redesigned and installed. So,
right.
it's right to take a close look at it to make sure that it's not going to impact the system.
Okay, but I think a resolution being prepared is in order. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments, questions, concerns? Okay, so with that, we will look for feedback at the next meeting we hope from the building inspector and ACARC, and see where we go. So anything else from the applicant? Are you fine with this?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. All right. So with that, thank you. We're going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the site development plan review. This is calendar number 4-21 PB, calendar number 42-21 WP, calendar number 08-21 SW. This is for 397 Smith Ridge Road, South Salem, New York. And it's an application for an addition to an existing self-storage facility at 397 Smith Ridge Road. Okay, and so who do we have on? Okay, Alan. Perhaps you'd like to take us through this, Alan.
Sure. May I share screen?
Yes, you may.
Hopefully everybody can see that. Yes. Okay, good. So good evening. I'm Alan Pilch. Good evening, members of the planning board. I'm Alan Pilch from ALP Engineering, and I'm here representing the owner of the properties, 397 Smith Ridge Road, LLC. We are applying to expand the existing building, and we made applications for site development plan approval, wetland permit application, and stormwater permit. So I'll just run through this. The property itself is about 40,000 square feet in size. It's roughly about 200 feet on a side. It's this property here on the east side of Smith Ridge Road. This is Route 123. What's currently on the property are two self-storage buildings, one L-shaped building, which has frontage along Smith Ridge Road, and one sort of interior building, which we call building number 2. Those are the two self-storage buildings on the property, and this is the paved access way through the property. I'll just say there is a wetland located to the east of the property. It's completely off-site, but it's really located in here. This is freshwater wetland D45, which, as I say, is located to the east of the property. The town regulated buffer actually covers about, I think it's about 49% of the property, probably extends through about to here or so within the property. So it is proposed, I'll just show you that this was kind of like the final as-built that was prepared back in 2015, I believe, which shows the L-shaped building. In shade is the access, the paved access, and there's the single one-story storage building. And off-site over here is where the freshwater wetland is located. So what's being proposed on this property is a 500 square foot addition to, called the existing L-shaped building, a 1,500 square foot new building to be located, this is the edge of the pavement currently there. Oops, sorry. So that's a new building which will be placed here. That's, by the way, the town's 100, that's the 100-foot buffer off of the state wetland. That's the 150-foot buffer that the town regulates. And a third building on the property, that would be proposed building number 4, which is 1,350 square feet, we'll say. So that all three buildings together would total 3,350 square feet. And with that, there'd be a total of 10,062.5 square feet of one-story buildings on the property. I will say that the construction of these two new buildings and the addition to the existing building would result in a building coverage of 24.76%. And since in the GB district zone, the general business district zone, the maximum coverage is limited to 20% of the property. So we would be requesting a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'll just say the access to the property won't change. It will continue to be from the existing driveway, and there are no changes proposed to the existing driveway at all. With regard to the wetland, I'll just say with regard to the wetland buffer, we did propose, I'm just flipping pages, sorry. We did propose, I'll just say within the 150 foot buffer. So there's just the new building, the addition, the new building, and the two new buildings would be within the town's wetland buffer. And we would also be expanding the existing stormwater management facility within the buffer, which would continue to provide up to stormwater management up to the 25-year storm. And we are proposing mitigation within the wetland buffer. This would consist of, this would essentially consist of additional on-site planted mitigation. The former mitigation area was here. This would be the new planting area that we proposed. And we also have an agreement with the property to the south, 401 Storage Corporation, to essentially have an agreement to plant another 20-foot deep portion of that property, which is obviously very close to the wetland. The wetland line is not really any, I'll call it building use to 401 Storage Corporation, but essentially an easement to permit us to plant within this area. And that additional 4,000 square feet would provide a total of 14,733 square feet of wetland buffer enhancement, which would exceed the total disturbance from the town's buffer of 14,705 square feet. And that's essentially what the proposal involves. So with that, we obviously did receive the comments from Kellard's office, and they all seem fairly straightforward for us to address, but I'll let you and discuss it with Mr. John Hannison.
Okay, so that's a good lead in that perhaps, Jan, you would like to hit some of the highlights of your memo?
Sure. Alan, just a question before I jump in. Is there a retaining wall proposed on the back side of the buildings?
What'll happen is that I'll say there will be a retaining wall, but it'll be integral with the building itself. So like essentially the foundation will serve as a retaining wall.
Okay, but I was just, how tall would that be from the adjacent grade below?
I see the adjacent grade below goes from, let's say, 110 to about 116 with a finished floor of 119. So it'll be between, let's say, 9 feet to, the grades around 121. So say 7 to 9 feet and maybe 6 feet.
Okay.
That wall. if you will.
That's what I thought. I was just curious what the purpose of the gates would be between the buildings. It seems like you would open up those gates and there would be a drop.
Yeah, that was my comment.
Well, actually, yeah, I see what you're saying there.
And it's not shown on the elevations, by the way. There's no staircase going down.
Okay, something we'll address. That's what I'll say. We'll address that issue.
What was the purpose of the gates? Just to get access to the...
To the planting area, the mitigation area. So it's something we'll address on the plan.
No.
We'll address it.
Let's see.
Yeah, I was wondering.
I know
if
at this end, it's
perhaps
pretty close.
that was to allow you to push snow out the back onto the plantings. So I think helping us understand those gates would be helpful.
Sure. That's fine.
Just in terms of SECRA, I viewed this as a type 2 action, given the fact that there's less than 4,000 square feet of commercial space proposed. Though I'll defer to Judd for comment on that. Approvals before the planning board are amended site development plan approval, stormwater permit, and a wetland activity permit, and a public hearing is required. As Alan mentioned, it would require a building coverage variance from the ZBA, referral to ACARC, and because of proximity on the state road, referral to the Westchester County Planning Board. We did recommend that the application be referred to the building department for zoning review, as well as the Vista Fire Department. Had a couple comments on the bulk zoning table and zoning parameters. The wetland mitigation plan looked, obviously it's conceptual in nature, but it looks like it would achieve with the offsite mitigation, the 1-to-1 mitigation ratio. I'd asked Judd to take a look at the easement that was submitted, the agreement with the neighbor, but if the board was comfortable with the offsite mitigation, I think that the mitigation planning concept looked okay to us. Obviously, we'll look for a full planting plan. The prior approval for Kaplan self-storage required I believe it was either a 3 or 5 year wetland maintenance reporting period, which is kind of consistent with many of the board's larger project approvals and requires the applicant to submit reports on a yearly basis, identifying the status and viability of the wetland mitigation. That is a condition that was not complied with. We never received any reports. So we would ask that Alan or someone this caliber evaluate the existing previously approved mitigation to see how it's kind of stood the test of time, and if it's viable, what's the quantity of the plants, the condition of the plants, if any of that needs to be supplemented in order to achieve kind of the intent of the prior plan. That was that. The wetland in the back, as Alan alluded to, also regulated by the New York State DEC. I believe that delineation was conducted more than 10 years ago, so should be reconfirmed by DEC. There's no physical land disturbance activities or permanent disturbances to DEC buffer, but there is plantings proposed in the DEC buffer. So, you know, I've seen the DEC permit that in the past, and I've seen them just kind of agree to it in the past. So if Alan could have a conversation with them just to see how they want to handle the installation of the plant material in the buffer, and if there's any sort of permitting required. A lighting plan should be submitted with the step 2 application, and some, you know, basic construction details. The stormwater pollution prevention plan that was submitted, we would review with the step 2 application, and we'd ask that Alan contact our office to schedule testing for the expansion of that system. It's kind of the highlights of it. You know, I'd note that there does appear to be limited snow storage. The area where the building is being proposed was kind of the area that was intended to be used for snow storage. And the dumpster enclosure has, you know, there's a very small refuse enclosure proposed, I think, in front of that last building there. So, you know, understanding a little bit from the applicant or the owner, kind of the needs of the refuse enclosure would be helpful. You know, I've had conversations with him before, and it's indicated it's got a pretty small need there, but
Right. So
you could understand that a little bit more to make sure that a larger enclosure isn't necessary.
okay.
Yeah, Jerome, before Jan and board members, very quickly, just to follow up on some of Jan's comments. Yeah, I do concur from a secret perspective that this is a type 2 action. As Alan mentioned, there has been a building coverage exceedance that will have to be addressed by the ZBA. And in order to get that going, they're going to need a determination from the building inspector. So I would recommend that we make that referral to the building inspector tonight so that that process can get going. With regard to the mitigation plan, look, the overall sufficiency of that plan and the use of an offsite area, that's a call for the board to make. Code permits it, and we've permitted offsite mitigation before, and here you have properties that are literally side by side. I've looked at the easement, you know, preliminary. It looks good. I may have some modest comments, but it looks like it's in pretty good shape. So the one takeaway I would just say, one, from a secret perspective, I think we're in the clear, and this could really be moved along by the building inspector referral tonight.
Okay. I do have, I think, another question. Well, actually, so one is, in addition to getting the reports on the condition of the wetland mitigation, that's, you know, the plantings from the last time through, I would really like to see a photo of the level spreader. It seems like this property is going to be very densely paved and populated with buildings. And I'd really like, we're very dependent upon the water quality treatment. And I'd like to make sure that the level spreader has been maintained or is being maintained. I would also ask whether there's been any thought given to perhaps some permeable pavement back, you know, between the buildings, or someplace where there's apt to be snow storage or less access, or but but just trying to recognize that the coverage on the site is, I know that you're looking for a variance on building coverage, but even including the asphalt, there's an awful lot of site coverage, ground coverage here.
It's absolutely something we can look at. Absolutely.
Yeah, the other thing, and I know this might not be possible, but I think on this plan, as we look at it, at the very front, on the side next to 401, it looks like there's some 3 trees that are being cut down or gone or something. That might be right on the property line, but the rest of the property is sort of nicely landscaped, and then that area looks a little shaggy. I don't know whether there's anything that could be done just to make that look a little nicer, but it appears to be right on the property line, and I don't know whether that is something you could do or not.
You're referring to this area right here.
I am.
Okay. We'll take a look at that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Right now, just say this is
Right.
the entry of it. But that being said, I was there in February, so that's how.
Yes. So that side is not the bad side, is not the
No,
side.
I
And
get
see,
that.
that's how nicely, that looks really nice. And then right at the edge, it isn't quite as attractive.
Right. We'll take a look.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Are there any other comments from?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jerome.
Yeah, back to the plan, and in regard to that level spreader that you mentioned, I'm not sure that's the existing location. Is that right, Alan? Or
No, actually, it's being moved, the level spreader. So,
okay,
because of the building expansion.
so it could be enlarged or improved on, as Janet is suggesting. But my concern was, if you look at the detail for that, it calls for a maximum 2-on-1 slope between the building and the level spreader in the cross section. And what you've got there, I think, is going to be about 0.5 to 1. In other words, yeah. If you look at the distance between the back of the addition to the L-shaped building, it's about 6 to 8 feet, perhaps. And the drop there is about 12. About 108 is at least 10 feet.
I think what we can do is certainly draw a section across here. I think.
Yeah, well, if the section you have does not jive with this plan, so check that.
Okay, we'll check that.
What I was wondering, though, was if the two alleyways leading nowhere to a great drop are not necessary for egress or any other purpose, why not fill them in, get rid of the small spaces that are in the middle alleyway, and put them in the end building to the north.
Yeah.
And and that way you might be able to pull that building back a little bit, the addition, and get it away from the level spreader, or give you some more flexibility. But I think those spaces are more trouble than they're worth, frankly.
You mean this? You mean
those two?
To enlarge this space here.
Fill that in. You make that a larger storage bin, and then take the L-shaped addition and make that the smaller spaces that you have off that alley. Anyway.
Okay.
So the architect can straighten that out, but I think eliminating those might be more of an advantage, and then perhaps pulling that end building in a little bit, so it would give the level spreader some more distance.
Right, I understand.
Just a
give a little more space around the perimeter of this.
Exactly.
To potentially like fill in the space and remove some of this, so that there is more open area here.
Yeah.
At this end. Understood. Thank you. That's a good comment.
Although, Jerome, just so you know, I think those are lots of little storage units right along those alleyways.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But that could be replicated in the end building with just a hallway and small storage space.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll let them work it out. But
yeah.
The way this works, there's access in through here, and you get storage space, storage space, storage space.
The openings are more trouble than work.
Yeah, understood. I'll speak with Stephen Kaplan, who's the architect. but that's a good
Okay,
point.
so I think we are looking for
I have a
agreement.
couple comments.
Oh, sure. Yes, sorry.
No,
Maureen,
that's
go ahead.
okay. So just to recap and more for my edification, this is about 3,000 square feet of new building, all within the town wetland buffer,
Right.
very close to the state wetland buffer. I would assume, but would love to hear it from an expert, that the requirements for a commercial building, I guess this would be warehouse, are different than, say, a retail building, certainly different than residential building. But I'd also like to understand when in the past, if another application like this has come up in front of us, where there has been 3,000 square feet of new building completely within the town wetland buffer. So Jan, I don't know how good your memory is.
Yeah, I don't want to speak without knowing the answer, so I can certainly look into that to see kind of similar applications. But I don't have that for you tonight.
Okay.
I think your point that you're getting to, though, Maureen, is it is a precedent that we might be setting that gives an extreme amount of coverage sort of a large 3,000 square foot of building of any sort within a wetland buffer.
Right. And, I know that it's very different from a residential unit with septic and wells and things like that, and even retail. But I just don't know. I don't have anything in front of me that I can refer to where we've opined on this type of application.
I'm
completely open to hearing what others think about this.
Right. I think
And
when
would like to hear
we looked at when this was first designed and put in, we were pretty careful to try to keep things away from, as you can see, there's only minimal intrusion into the Lewisboro wetland buffer at one end of the L, and we had most of the activity pulled pretty far back.
Right.
Any other comments from?
Yes.
Judd? Come in, Judd.
I'm here.
Okay. Is there a rule regarding us following precedent, or more specifically, not being obligated to follow precedent? I seem to remember something along those lines.
Well, look, precedent is always kind of a tricky issue because every application kind of stands or falls on its own. Each has its own unique facts. And each application really has to be gauged by placing the proposed activity against the standards, against the proposed mitigation. And, I would say, unlike other determinations that might be rendered in sort of the zoning and planning area, for example, variance determinations or determinations by a ZBA, planning decisions like this one are really guided by each particular application. So,
right. That's what I remember that historically.
Right.
Being something that's guided us. I didn't know if that was actually something that's been either, codified or judicially mentioned, but I do remember that we've always been guided by that.
Right. And look, Maureen's raised the issue with Jan. We'll take a look to see what has or hasn't been approved in the past. But this is its own application. This is its own kind of specific use. That may or may not have, kind of a more a pronounced impact on the, the wetland and its location in the buffer area. But we'll look at what we've done in the past. But no, to answer your question, is there a strict precedential rule? No.
No.
Okay. All right.
May I?
Go ahead, Sean.
Okay. I think that, how large is the mitigation area for the easement?
For the easement itself, it's about 4,000 square feet. It's 200 feet long by 20 foot wide. That's the easement area that's outside. The total mitigation is about 14,700 square feet.
Right, but the easement it's larger than the proposed building.
Correct.
Right. Maureen, though, you bring up a good issue, because not only is it all in the wetlands area, it's also requiring a zoning board variance in order to do so. So that's like sort of a double whammy there. However, I think that there is the mitigation area with the easement that is more than the area that they're taking. So I don't know. I think that we really should look at what has happened before. I certainly don't know.
Why don't we get the referrals done and then see what they say, and then we can, start being more specific at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Craig.
The only thing I would add is it's a very clean use, and if those alleyways are eliminated, there's no access to that
Right.
area, and that speaks in its favor. Even though it's
And we might be in a position to be able to limit what goes in those particular storage bins, or whatever they're called, units, whatever. I mean, if that's really a concern.
it's a point.
I do remember that when this was up for approval, and I think you were right, it was back 2015-ish, that there was concern about some of the uses to which these storage units might be put. I'm not sure I really remember all of the concerns. And Alan, I guess I'd ask whether whether there's been any kind of complaints from the neighbors, disturbance reports to the police, anything that might have, been some of the concerns that were raised well before I was on the board, I think.
I can certainly find out. I don't know of any. I haven't heard of any, but that's fine. I will surely look into that.
I certainly think it's been, I haven't heard of anything, I've seen anything in the police reports, and I think it's been in nice condition. I think there was some concern that was because this was a new use. We didn't have many storage buildings in the town.
Right. I remember there was concern that, kids would hang out here, but it's a gated entry, and, it's more challenging that way. That's what I'll say.
Right.
Yeah, my number one concern is to treat everyone fairly, and to make sure that we are treating homeowners and commercial real estate owners in the fairest way possible. So let me be clear on kind of what my thoughts are there, and why I raised the question in the first place.
Okay, Jerome, did I see you had a comment before?
No, I spoke before.
Okay, so I would look for consensus to refer this to, I think, the building inspector, Vista Fire Department, ACARC, and Westchester County Planning Board, I think, are the ones that are up. And unfortunately, I can't see everybody right now, so maybe I will.
Take down the screen, maybe.
Oh, okay.
I'll be more than happy to. Done.
That
Sorry.
makes it a
We're back.
okay. So now I
Sorry.
can look for consensus by, I guess I'll ask for thumbs up from everyone. All right, so we can consider this referred to those four authorities.
It's Vista Fire Department, the Building Department.
Building Inspector, Vista Fire Department, ACARC, and Westchester County Planning Board. I think we're the four. Okay. And we have given a few assignments to Alan in terms of wetland mitigation and looking at some other things, explanation of the dumpster, snow storage. So
Yes.
is there anything else that we want to discuss on this before we move on? Okay, hearing no comments, I guess I will say thank you, Alan, and if you can resubmit for next month, we will see you then.
I really appreciate the time everyone's taken. Some very good comments. Really appreciate it very much.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, I think the next item on our agenda is a subdivision. This is the Truesdale Lake Property Owners Association, the Hoyt Street Paper Road, South Salem, New York, 10590. And it's an application for a lot line change, but this is a little bit of a discussion to clarify really what approvals might be needed and what steps we want to take to get there. So maybe Jan, I'm going to ask you to kind of review, because this is a little different, review where we stand on this and why it's in front of us.
Sure.
And we should say, I think the people here on this are Nick Fajoli, I might not say that right.
Pagoli, close enough.
Close enough for government work. Here we are. And I see Nancy Gural, and I assume a husband is there too.
Yes,
Hi.
Eric.
Okay.
Hi.
So Jan, with that.
Sure. First, the Gurals have had applications before the board in the past. I've worked with Nancy a few times with administrative wetland permits, so I'm pretty familiar with the property. Some of the board members might be when they renovated their home some years ago. But Nancy and her husband have been looking to find a place for a dock on their property for a while now. We've gone over the years different ideas, and this one involves the purchasing of land from the Truesdale Lake Property Associates to combine with the Gural property in order to place a dock on, I'll call it like a watercourse that that's conveyed into Truesdale Lake. And the dock is kind of unique because it's a waterway. The dock is actually going to be cantilevered over the water, so it doesn't become an obstruction or collect debris, if any, coming from the waterway. And when I met with Nancy, I told her that, you know, it's not as simple as just a dock wetland permit application, that there's a land conveyance here that would likely necessitate a lot line change and a subdivision approval from the planning board. And I described kind of what that process usually involves and the need for surveys of both properties and such. And she said, and probably rightfully so, you know, I don't want to go through that process and the expense of the survey work and going through the subdivision process if I don't know that, you know, the dock is something that the planning board will ultimately, you know, consider favorably. So I said, why don't you come in to the board with a very conceptual plan of kind of what you want to do, discuss the location and kind of how the dock would be constructed, get some feedback from the board, and if the board seems amenable to the project, maybe you take the next step and figure out how the land conveyance would take place. So that's kind of why we're here. I did not prepare a memo. The information that's been provided to date is conceptual in nature, but it's enough to have a discussion. So, I think from my perspective, it would be important for the board to opine on the dock application. And if that is seen favorably, then I think the applicant would know that it could take the necessary steps to kind of prepare the next set of documents for the subdivision.
Great. If it's okay with you all, I can give like a 2-minute macro summary on that area of our lake, a quick little back history and kind of the TLPOA Association's thoughts on this, but I'll obviously wait.
Sure, go ahead, Nick.
Okay, great. Would you all mind horribly if I share my screen real quick?
Go ahead.
All right. So, okay, share. Does everyone see the municipal tax parcel viewer? Are we?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so this is our beautiful lake. The area in question, as you could see, is the inlet stream coming in, which is actually the main inlet stream, which actually was the river that was dammed to cause our lake back in 1929. One thing of interest is you could see Nancy and Eric own the actual largest property on the lake or near the lake of any property within any of the association boundaries. They have, as Jan mentioned a couple of times in the past, tried to figure out a way to get a access to the waterway from their property. So now I'm going to quickly switch to, this is the subdivision back in 1980 that TLPOA sold to Jeffrey Vreeland to create what I guess was supposed to be called the Lakeview Close Association. It's never actually been run as an association, kind of almost like a Articles of Confederation type situation they have over there. But this is
Nick, we still see the tax
Yeah,
parcel.
the plan's not up.
really. Ooh, let's see. Yeah, me and this Zoom thing do not get along well. Let me go back to.
If you pause your sharing and then
And then redo it.
yes, that might make it easier.
Okay. You are screen sharing. Stop share. Okay, so I stopped share. Now let's reshare. Oh, I see. Okay, I didn't realize it did that. Share. Oh, I see. Every different window I have up. Okay, so do you all now see the subdivision of the Lakeview Close?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
So everything you see within this boundary was sold to Jeffrey Vreeland back in 1980 to create each of these individual parcels you all see on here. On the bottom part where it says Hoyt Street, this was supposed to be a street that crossed the inlet and then crossed over to what's now Truesdale Estates Association, that probably for economic reasons not to create a bridge never was built. You might see this little kind of semicircle. That's where Hoyt Street now ends, and the town has ownership of the blacktop. TLPOA still owns the paper roads, and we still have, maintenance costs and whatnot. So I'm probably going to have to do the stop share again. Oh, actually, wait, let me try this. Do you all see now the childlike coloring on the screen?
No,
No,
nothing.
you
There's
see-
nothing on the screen now.
Okay, geez. Okay, so I got to stop it and restart it. Hold on.
You
one-
did stop it. Yes, I think.
Yeah, so I got to do that again. Wow. Childlike coloring, here it is. Okay. So this is my very professional rendering of the area close up. The purple is the paper street. The yellow triangle is the continuance of the paper street across the inlet stream. The blue stripe line is the land Nancy and Eric own. The red stripe land is the folks, the Puckalove property. As you could see, those properties actually own the base of the inlet stream. So Nancy and Eric already own a piece of the waterway already. In the idea that by purchasing the yellow piece of the stream, the purple piece has rights of way for us to access the green, which is one of our boat launches. So, and there's, many different rights of ways with the purple aspect of it, but they all go up to the water's edge. And then the yellow has no rights of way or no real. If anyone had a chance to look at what Nancy had submitted, you'll see that the yellow really is a continuance of her property. There's no benefit to our association. There's no, we've had maintenance cost. A tree came down that cost our association $1,000 to clean up. There's no benefit. So when our board and our association was considering their request to us to remove a piece of property that just has no benefit and a cost association with us, to add to their property, which really is kind of a part of their property already, and give them access to the water, seemed like a reasonable request. We did put a number of restrictions, which is part of our agreement if the sale were to go through, such as we did not want a structure resting on the water because of the spring thaw with the inlet flow, which is pretty significant through that. So we didn't want anything touching the water. We didn't want anything bolted to the water. So a cantilever seemed to be the most logical and reasonable, which stands above the water, will never touch. And they still will be able to put a boat in and step into it. We also said no permanent structure could be put onto the property, the land side of the property. Nancy could probably mention a couple other stipulations that we made and came to an agreement on to make this work for everybody. So in the end, from our perspective, this is something that has no tangible benefit. There's no negative repercussions to the waterway, to the environment. And that's kind of the logic of why we think this seems to make sense, and obviously wanted to reach out to you all, figure out what else we could do or you all need to make this work. So,
Okay, thank you, Nick.
yep, I'll stop sharing screen. So stop sharing. Okay.
Does anyone want, oh, go ahead, Jerome.
Yeah, I have no problem at all with the land transfer. It seems like a natural thing. It's a paper street, and the bulk of it is already the Goral's land on extension of their property. And the key issue is been taken care of by the Tuesday Lake Association in terms of protecting the inlet from any debris and so forth, and which is causing a fairly costly construction that I can't leave it done. So I have no trouble with the whole package, and could see it going administrative right off the bat. I do have a question though regarding Hoyt Street. Does the town pay that street, or is it a private street?
Oh, fun story. So Truesdale Lake paved all the streets back in the 1960s. We were paying full taxes to the town, which therefore took up all of and then the town wouldn't plow or maintain our streets, even though we were paying a full levy to the town. So in 1974, an agreement was reached between TLPOA and the town so that the town would take ownership of the streets. They plow it, they maintain it. But interestingly enough, it's only the blacktop. We still own below the back. Yeah, oh, it is. I've read the agreement. It's hysterical. If something falls on the street, a tree, for example, Mr. Rippinger will cut away up to the edge of the blacktop and then say, the rest is yours. Have at it. Oh, it's a hoot. So it's the most bizarre agreement between an association, a town you've ever read. It's bad. So yeah, in the end, the town maintains the streets, plows them. But once the pavement ends, then it's all us.
Yeah. So my recommendation still stands. I would make a motion that we allow this to go administrative.
And can we do this now?
No, the issue, the issue is that, I mean, if this were simply the dock and a wetland permit, yeah, but there's a proposed transfer of property and
Oh,
a
yeah.
proposed lot line change. And there's been some question raised that by way of the transfer being made by way of a quitclaim deed, would that still trigger the need for a lot line change? My read, ultimately that's the building inspector's call, but my read is it does. It is a transfer of it is a conveyance.
Yes. So Judson, you're 100% right. That misconception is completely my fault.
Okay.
Our lawyer, Sue Simon, said subdivision versus lot line change, and I got the two completely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you're 100% right.
Yeah, I mean, lot line change is a form of subdivision technically, but we're just talking about it. We're talking about a very simple, single step process to affect that lot line change.
But as Judd has indicated, it does come with some costs to the new owners who have to do surveying and such. So I think what we want to do, or let me look for any other comments from anybody else on the board. I think as Judd has indicated, the next step might be to send this to the building inspector and to get his view as to the next steps that would be inherent in this, assuming we want to go forward. So, but I guess I should pretty much confirm. Go ahead,
Jan,
Joe.
I can. Yeah, I think that steps needs to be taken. I think we can fairly anticipate a call by the building inspector that under the subdivision regs, that an application is going to have to be made. So if this is something that the association and the property owners want to pursue, I would just proceed as if that's going to happen. If, you've heard the board that there's receptivity to the dock. As Jan said, we don't want to dive into this and say, just file the application if at the end of the day, there was going to be some, practical concern with regard to the way the dock is going to be installed.
And Nancy and Eric and I will follow up with Jan to make sure on the dock side of it, because obviously, they have no interest in the property if a dock is not going to be okayed, which I completely understand.
Right. So let me, Nick, before you go further, let me just, because I heard Jerome saying, let's move it administratively, which we now understand the limits to that, but I haven't really looked to the other board members to make sure that they are all in okay with this before we get ahead of ourselves. So, I know Jerome thinks this is fine. I'm looking for any comments, or I guess it's more in the terms of concerns from anyone else about having them go forward, because when this comes back, it may be something we would then have to look at and say yay or nay. So Maureen, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I have no concerns. Thanks.
Okay, Charlene?
Neither do I.
Okay, Greg?
Okay, so just so that I'm clear, we cannot make a recommendation or a suggestion about doing this administratively right now. So we're talking about having the procedure run out with respect to the lot line transfer. And if it comes back to us, would we be considering an administrative referral? Is that what's basically we're talking about?
That really is the call.
Okay.
Yeah, because if it goes administrative, the board is basically saying we're okay with it. Put it in Jan's hands. So
yes. All right. So absolutely, I would agree.
Okay. I wanted to make sure there weren't any concerns before we got any further down the line there, and that we really were doing the right thing. The other thing.
No, I truly appreciate it. The Nancy and Eric and I and our board, want to be right by the lake and want to make sure that it's appropriate, that it's reasonable. They've actually gone from if you look at the plans that they submitted to you all in anticipation, it's smaller than the minimum allowable for a lot of that size. I think they've done the right thing in terms of being very good lake residents, and in terms of what they've already done to their home, improving the lake community. I really appreciate you all kind of seem to feel the same way. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
Nick, I do have one thing that in some of the paperwork that I think we saw, there was a comment from the assessor. This is the town assessor, Lise Robertson, that there might have been some limit as to the number of docks that could be on some property. I saw a note. I just want to make sure that, and we don't need to answer it now, but that you guys have looked at it and are
Yes.
comfortable with it before.
Yes, and I can actually answer the question right now. The dock limitation was specific to lot number 33, which is one of our boat launches, and that we could not put multiple boat launches on that property. It had no consideration within the paper road.
Great. Okay. I just didn't want anybody going further and then finding this later. So that's great. Okay. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Did we agree to, did we agree to refer this to the building inspector?
Believe so.
Okay, let's.
Thumbs up.
So,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So
And we do, but we can do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
you muted,
Did it
Jeff.
again. Did it again. That's simply for the building inspector to concur that they need the lot line change, which I expect will
All right,
happen.
so that's what we're doing. Okay. All right.
Okay,
All right. I concur.
great. Okay, have we, anything else on this?
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Many thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay. The next item on our agenda is a wetland permit review, calendar number 41-21 WP, the Hardock Dock, 12 Gilbert Street, South Salem, New York, 10590, and it's an application for a floating dock. And I see that Frank is on the call with us.
Hello.
Hi, Frank.
Hi.
So I think one of the items that we had been concerned about was association approval and plot plan. And I believe that you have submitted both of those to us.
Yes.
So rather than go through a lot, I mean, I would look for a motion to make this an administrative approval as we have talked about previously.
So moved.
All right, thank you, Jerome. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Greg. Any discussions, questions, anything for Mr. Hardart? Okay, then I will poll the board. Jerome,
Yes.
Maureen,
Aye.
Charlene, you're muted,
Aye.
and Greg,
Yes.
and me too. So, so we, as the motion to make this an administrative wetland permit has been approved, and we leave this in Jan's good hands.
I have one question. One question.
Sure.
Mr. Harder, are you related to Mr. Horn?
I saw that. That was, in fact, my great grandfather, who was
Wow.
his partner. So, yep.
Wonderful.
I miss him.
One of my favorite cafeterias. I used to go to 3rd Avenue and 42nd.
I remember.
Oh yeah,
I remember that one.
That was great.
that was the last. That was the last one standing, actually.
That's right.
I was a little boy.
Mhm.
I wasn't.
I did go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cheesecake for a nickel. Who could beat that?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
Whatever, a dime maybe.
yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Okay, so good memories all around, and
thank you for taking.
so
the time.
I thank you, and you will be able to get in touch with Jan and get this
Okay.
moving forward.
Great.
Okay.
All right.
The next thing on our agenda is a discussion of a town board proposal to amend the Lewisboro Town Code. Town board to amend section 220-43.7 to provide a special use permit provisions for gasoline service stations. So this has been distributed and you all have seen this. And we are required or to respond to the town board. It's part of our job as a planning board to respond when things are referred to us, whether or not there is an application in front of us, as I understand. Judd, you might want to make sure I'm saying the right thing.
That's correct. The zoning code requires that any proposed amendment to the code be passed by the town board to the planning board for review and recommendation or comment. And that holds no matter what may be before or not before the board at any time.
And could you also comment, I asked you this question earlier about should this law pass, or should any law pass, before we even if we have an application in front of us, but before we finalize it, does the new law apply?
Yeah, New York is what's known as a time of decision jurisdiction, meaning that the board would be obligated to apply the zoning code that is in effect at the time it acts on a particular application. I mean, there are some very limited exceptions that are, there are a couple of limited exceptions to that requirement, but the standing rule is that, you know, if the law changes in the course of an application, whatever the law is at the time of decision has to be applied.
Okay, so I think that sort of sets the framework for our discussion here tonight. It certainly answered a couple of my questions about how we deal with this with an application in front of us. So I don't know if anyone wants to kick off the discussion of this.
So whose application is in front of us? Is that still the one from like 2 years ago?
No, it's the Vista Market. Just came before us last month.
Okay.
So the Vista
Because
Market.
I remember 2 years ago we had this law and there was an application and then everything kind of got pushed to the side.
There was
7-Eleven, but they withdrew it.
Yeah, it was a 7-Eleven, right?
In
Right.
Cross River, right? Yeah,
And I think what happened is they withdrew now.
correct.
Well,
So
because, yeah.
So
I mean, I would start. I have some feelings about it. I would like to hear what everybody else has to say, but having, you know, been involved with planning and zoning for the last, well, since the mid 60s, I have always been under the impression that one of the things that we can interfere with is free enterprise, free enterprise. That, or the other term for it would be whatever the term is, that we can't determine how many of any one particular use there should be within the town. That's not within our. It's my understanding, and I'd like Judd to correct me if I'm wrong. That's not within our purview. So that's, which seems to me to be the driving force here, was the comments that were in the newspaper, comments by the supervisor saying, well, there's already 2 gas stations in Vista. Why do we need another one? That's not our job. That's a business decision as far as I'm concerned. Secondly, concerns about spillage. There were also comments in the paper about, well, electric cars are on the way, therefore there's going to be a decreased need for gas. Again, not our decision. Third, there was a comment about people using bicycles more. Well, that's great. I think it's great for health, and I don't think that should influence whether or not there should be another gas station in that community. The other thing that disturbed me when I read the newspaper article was, well, there's potential leakage, and it's in a wetland area. Well, we know that, and in fact, the danger is not the new gas station, but the existing ones that perhaps don't have the same standard of construction and concern when they were put in. A new gas station that if we were to approve it, would have many belt and suspenders protection for leakage, etc. So I think it's it's an attempt to satisfy a constituency within that feels like they don't want a gasoline alley, quote unquote. Neither do I. But I just feel that there are other ways to protect that, both with aesthetics and with the landscaping, and that we could be criticized or even have a lawsuit with this kind of a zoning change. I've spoken.
Thank you, Jerome. Anyone else want to comment?
I have a question for Judd. Since it's a special use permit rather than just a zoning regulation, would that quell the concern about limitation of businesses? Because it's a special use permit, not just a zoning regulation.
No, well, as a special use permit, the use can be placed as proposed, but it has to meet each of the specified standards.
Right.
A dimensional standard like this one is subject to a variance application before the ZBA, but a threshold call is for it to exist and for it to be established and maintained. Does it meet this dimensional requirement? So this is a requirement that has real teeth in terms of where these types of uses could be placed.
Right. And I think it avoids some of the issues that if it were just like zoning regulation in general, like in a certain district. This is a special use, and I think there's more control over it. But once they meet all the qualifications, then you sort of have to give it to them.
Right. But the question here is this particular qualification one, being placed at a mile, is it one that, is rationally related to, an objective in furtherance of the public, health, safety, and welfare? Is it really consistent with a kind of a comprehensive zoning scheme and the comprehensive plan? Those are the kinds of questions the board has to look at. Is a mile, does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that I would pose to the board to, other than, that it might be some spillage or there might, whatever, too many on one road. Those are the questions as to what is the rationalization, the legal rationalization for this particular 1 mile restriction.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anybody else have?
Well, I remember about, I think it was 2019 when this came. It was sometime or maybe it was late 2018 or 2019. And there was another application, and we just mentioned it, the 7-Eleven application. So I'm definitely concerned that we're talking about laws that are concurrent with applications, which, are designed to maybe, in some way or another, impede or block these applications. I agree with everything that Jerome said. I always in my tenure on the planning board have difficulty with these zoning changes that have come up, I would say in the last 5 years or so, relating to what appear to be spot changes. And I realize that this is kind of worded a little bit differently, but nonetheless, I have my concerns about it. And I'm really not a person, I have concerns about this, and I'm not really in favor of this. And I don't think it's any different than the law that they put forth about 2 years ago. I don't see them any major differences.
I think the only difference is adding, instead of a 200-foot criteria, it's a mile criteria.
Mile criteria.
Maureen, anything that you want to say?
Yeah, I don't particularly like the optics of it. I tend to agree that if someone has the wherewithal to think that they want to put up some type of franchise or owned retail establishment because they think that there's demand that they could fulfill. Okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? They're wrong. They go out of business. And that's that. What's the best thing that could happen? There's competition brought in to the marketplace, and that could be good for all of us. So I tend to agree with what Jerome said at the outset. Yeah, I'm kind of wary of this arbitrary dimension.
So I'll now say my piece, and I think the word arbitrary is exactly it. So I do strongly disagree with the 1 mile criteria. In our current master plan, we have commercial activities centralized in hamlets. And in the hamlets, we have multiple vendors of certain activities, restaurants, delis, there's more than one activity, often some kind of food purveyor in a given hamlet. And I think if we were to start establishing something like one vendor per mile of a certain type, we would defeat the hamlet concept. And it would also give a monopoly to the first vendor that happens to be there. So if you look at Golden's Bridge, where I think there was some mention, well, maybe we need a gas station in Golden's Bridge. If we had this kind of 1 mile limitation, the first person in would de facto have a monopoly. And I'm not sure I really am comfortable with that. And finally, and this is something that Jan mentioned to me, if you had a 1 mile guideline established and some of the existing non-conforming, they would turn into non-conforming vendors, so a non-conforming gas station. If they wanted to upgrade, what would we have to do? What would they be limited by this? It's just a concern. So then sort of, I think this is something both Jerome and Greg mentioned, in 2019, we established a 200-foot criteria, and we haven't seen any problem with that law. And the 200 feet is distance from a number of things. It's other gas stations and recreational areas and churches and so forth. So changing this without any kind of rationale, changing the distance seems, to echo Maureen's word, but I don't have a better one, it just seems arbitrary. And finally, if we had a 1 mile criteria, I think it would tend to push commercial activities potentially into residential areas, which I'm not sure we want to do. So it's not only anti-hamlets, but it's kind of commercial into residential. I saw your hands. I'm just going to finish a couple other things. I think that if we want to, I do support concerns with the wetlands and with the aquifers, but I think it's a different solution. I think we should address the concerns directly rather than trying to say, let's spread out contamination in a whole lot of places. I think we could talk about required containment devices or modern treatments or monitoring underground storage tanks or any number of things. I think in 2019, we looked at the North Salem Code, and they require insurance for remediation, or if a gas station goes out of business and is abandoned, they have a requirement that there's some monetary way to get the gas tanks out of the ground or to get the gas out and fill up the gas tanks or whatever. So I think those are things that could address the concerns about wetlands and aquifers. And I'm also told that a big problem is that drivers drive away with a gas hose in the tank. Well, maybe there's some, I don't know, technology or big signage or something that could be done to stop the spillage if you're really worried about that. I think if you're going to look at the gas law, I would use the opportunity to update the law to address some other needs that have come out that we've looked at. When we've had some of these extended power outages and there's gas in the ground, the few gas stations that seem to be operated with generators seem to really have a benefit, a public benefit. So maybe we say that if you have a gas station, you have to have a way to get a generator or some other way to power the tanks for a certain period of time. We could require improved landscaping or appearance requirements. there are model ordinances that say, there ought to be pedestrian crosswalks and walkways that are in a different color or a different, Belgian block inserts or something. So if we want to address some of the issues that I think were brought up, there are different ways to do it than by saying we're going to put a mile between gas stations. So I would like to propose that we write a letter to the town board that kind of encapsulates some of those bullet points that I just went through. No. So I'd like your views on that. And I see Greg saying no, so maybe I'll ask you first.
All right. We've gone down this road before. I don't think that's within our auspices to do that. That's for the town board. And I don't think we should be suggesting it. I don't think we should be making these suggestions. I don't think we should be, arguing for one point or another with respect to these things. I mean, it's not what, and we were asked a specific question, and I think we reached a consensus that the 1 mile distance issue is arbitrary. And if you want to write a letter using that word, I think at least three people would agree with that word, if not 4. I'm not trying to, I don't know if we have a consensus. I just didn't really get Charlene's input on that, but I know everybody else felt that way. I don't think we have a requirement to do anything else. I mean, I'm not going to say that we should be, putting different walkways on or some of the other bullet points that you mentioned. I don't think that's our responsibility. I just don't. I mean, I think we're walking a tightrope with that, and we've done this before. We've got into this before.
Okay.
And I think it's always dangerous when we get one of these laws coming down from the town board. I mean, I think it's kind of a thorny issue for us.
So just to be clear, you're not objecting to saying we don't like the 1 mile criteria.
Right. I'm not objecting to that. I'm objecting to making our own suggestions to the town board that, I think would require another discussion that I'm not prepared for with respect to what we think, if in fact we're entitled to think that or entitled to give our opinion on that. And my history has been when we do try to go outside the bounds and make suggestions to the town board, they're soundly rejected. So, I mean, I'm not sure that that's something that we should be getting into.
Go. Okay, Charlene.
I agree that it's arbitrary, but I don't think, and maybe we shouldn't go into, because it hasn't been successful since I've been on the board. Our suggestions have not been incorporated. But I do think, because if it is arbitrary, there should be some rationalization to what they're doing. And as Jerome said, many of the statements that have been made about it really does not take away the arbitrariness of the law. So I would ask that if we could include in the letter some statement of a rationalization of why they're doing it, because the law doesn't really give that. And I think that there are a lot of legal ramifications to that. It doesn't seem to be, and I turn to Judd because it has its issues.
Yeah, it seems to me the common theme I'm hearing obviously is there's, first of all, the board wants to express the fact that it doesn't support the change. It's concerned that the standard is one that has been arbitrarily drawn, that the stated rationale in the local law with regard to protection of the aquifer and the fact that there could be a kind of a proliferation of these types of stations, and the increase in pedestrian and bicycle traffic do not in the planning board's opinion justify the 1 mile limitation. There are other ways to achieve those objectives without saying what they are.
It's basically the letter.
That's the letter, right? Yeah.
I'm not sure I put in that last thing about other ways to achieve the objective.
Yeah,
but,
yeah,
you know,
just-
I mean,
just in other
if
words,
everybody else
Greg-
feels differently, then that's
Yeah,
fine. Yeah.
Greg, I mean, in other words, we feel the stated rationale doesn't support the 1 mile limitation.
And just to adjust Charlene's point, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I don't think they're going to come back and tell us what their rationalization is. And I don't think they're going to do that. I think they'll take our position and then, you know.
Yeah,
say
but at
thank you
least
very
we're
much.
on the record, Greg.
Well, no, I mean, to ask them for it?
Yeah, that, it's a responsibility, I think, that we have in reviewing it.
No. Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to try again and sort of say that what I heard or what I read was these comments about wetland protection, aquifer protection, bikes and pedestrians and electric cars were what they thought was a rationale. And I take to heart your comments that we should not maybe suggest new laws that monitor that, but I think we should say that I think we could say that there are direct ways to address the concerns stated in the preamble, and that we feel that the 1 mile criteria or establishing a 1 mile criteria is not does not address the stated purposes of this change.
I agree with that, but I don't agree that, you know, we should be
I heard you. I mean,
toying with the idea of, you know, making other suggestions, but I mean, you know, that's a nuance to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think they ought to, the preamble isn't addressed by the 1 mile criteria.
Right, I think we all agree on that.
Okay, good. All right, so what I'd look for, and I think I need a motion, is to I think Judd has taken good notes about what we've come up with as a letter to the town board. So I'd look for a motion to incorporate those comments into a letter and your authorization for me to sign it and send it to the town board.
I'll make that motion.
Is that,
No, I'm sorry.
that's okay. Is that an implication that, Janet, we won't get to review the letter before you sign it and send it?
Well,
A good point.
I think we could distribute it by email,
I
but
would distribute it by email.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the concern is that I think the town board is looking to take action within the next month before we meet again. So we would not be able to discuss this in a group setting. And we have generally avoided doing email discussions of these kind of letters. So you tell me what.
I have a friendly amendment to the,
Yes,
I'd like to request a return receipt signature.
I'm sorry. So when we send it to the town
I'd
board,
like
we
a
know
return
that they got
receipt.
it?
Yes, please.
Why don't we send it by courier?
So,
Well, I mean, look, in terms of you know, our review of it, I think we basically heard an outline of what's going to be said.
Yeah.
And I think that if Judd pretty much wrote pretty much what he said tonight, I don't think that, it sounds like we might all be in favor of that.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree. I just would, I don't think that we should go outside of our bounds. I think more to what Greg was saying, you know, the town board has asked us to opine. We opine, we can opine strongly, but I don't think that we want to, I would not necessarily be in favor of more suggestions or any suggestions really.
What I'm hearing is really to tailor this to the board's, arbitrary is the key word. The board's concerned that there's a stated rationale. That
Right.
rationale, in the board's opinion, does not justify
Right.
a 1 mile limitation, and in the board's view, that, that makes the 1 mile limitation period, just an arbitrary standard, and very simple.
Yeah.
And that we oppose that, and we impose,
Right.
so
And you
therefore we
oppose it, yeah.
oppose.
If the rationale weren't part of the resolution, then maybe it would be improper to even mention it, but it is.
Right.
So it's right there in front of us. That's the basis for their, and it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah, and we can opine, like, if we're giving an opinion, then we can say what the basis of our opinion is. And the basis of our opinion is that it is arbitrary.
Right.
Okay, so I lost track of where we were. Did we had a motion from Greg. I don't think we had a second
Second,
from Jerome. Any further discussion? So I'm going to poll the board. Jerome.
Here.
Maureen. You're muted.
Aye.
Okay, 2 thumbs up, so that's an aye. All right, Charlene,
Aye.
Greg,
Yes.
and I also say yes. So we, Jerome, I'm sorry, Judd, I think you have, and you have a pretty good, I think, it sounds like you've basically written it, and all we need to do is get it typed. So thank you. Okay. We have also, the next item on the agenda are the minutes of May 18th, 2021.
I move we approve them as corrected.
Second.
Okay, so Jerome moved, Charlene seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to poll the board. Jerome.
Yeah.
Maureen.
Aye.
Charlene.
Aye.
Greg.
Yes.
And I also approve the minutes as updated. Okay, our next meeting date is July 20th, 2021. And with that, we're just a little late, Jerome. I'd look for a motion.
9:09, Jerome.
So moved.
Pretty good. Second.
Moved by Jerome, seconded by Greg, polling the board. Jerome.
Yes.
Maureen.
Aye.
Charlene.
Aye.
Greg.
Yes.
And me too. So thank you. Enjoy the official turnover into summer, and we'll see you all in a month.
Thank you.
Bye, all.
Good night.
Right.
Good night.